Boston, Massachusetts, winter of 1773. Fog rolls off the Boston harbor as crates of East India Company tea sit untouched on the decks of moored British ships. Crowds linger on the docks. British redcoats stand tense as tension simmers in the cobblestone streets. Inside the Green Dragon Tavern, voices rise in hushed tones. Samuel Adams, sharp-eyed and calculated, leans over a table with his inner circle, local merchants, smugglers, and one very nervous clergyman. They tax our tea today, they'll tax our breath tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the governor's mansion, Major Thomas Hallworth, a decorated British officer, is fuming. This city, he spits, is one match away from burning. What he doesn't know, the spark is already lit. Down the brick-lined back streets of Beacon Hill, Eliza Hallworth, the major's idealistic daughter, meets secretly with Noah Briggs, a rebellious printer's apprentice known for seditious pamphlets. She brings him information, troop movements, whispers from the officers' dinners. Their chemistry is electric. But Noah's older brother, Caleb Briggs, a hot-headed Sons of Liberty enforcer, warns him, "You're sleeping with the enemy, don't come crying when she sells you out." Noah doesn't listen. As Adams plots an act of defiance, a mystery man slips into the tavern unnoticed. Cloaked, hunched, unassuming, he orders a cider and slides a sealed letter to the barmaid. For Sir Frederick North, London, marked urgent and confidential. The barmaid, Abigail Green, once a laundress for the Hallworth household, recognizes the seal. It belongs to John Rutledge, a Charleston-born delegate now embedded in the Patriot cause. She pockets the letter and runs. Later that night, in her cramped North End tenement, she brings it to Caleb Briggs. "Someone's playing both sides," she says. On a cold December night, a crowd gathers along Griffin's Wharf. Disguised as Mohawk warriors, patriots led by Samuel Adams storm the ships and dump 342 chests of tea into the harbor. It's a rowdy, chaotic scene, but something is off. Noah spots Eliza in the crowd, alone, terrified. She mouths something to him. They know. The next morning, a shocked Samuel Adams storms into the tavern, slamming a British newspaper on the table. The headline reads, "Colonial Rebels Confess Plans, Letters Seized." The urgent and confidential correspondence has made its way into British hands. Rutledge arrives later that night, eyes sunken, breath shallow. I was compromised," he whispers, "but I swear I never wrote to London." Too late. Caleb already has a pistol drawn. Boston is in chaos. Loyalists call for executions, patriots call for secession. British warships loom in the bay. Eliza watches from her bedroom window as her father sharpens his saber, and across town, Noah hides his printing press beneath the floorboards. But it's Abigail Green, the barmaid, who delivers the final line, sitting alone by candlelight as she scribbles her own letter. To the Culper Ring. Boston is compromised. Prepare for war.
Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, spring 1775. Under the cover of night, Paul Revere gallops through the wooded roads outside Boston, hooves pounding like war drums. He's not alone. Sybil Luddington, a teenage courier from New York, rides in the opposite direction, carrying a letter from an anonymous source in Philadelphia. Revere's mission: warn John Hancock and Samuel Adams that the British are coming. Sybil's mission: warn George Washington that someone in the Continental Congress wants him gone before he even takes command. At dawn in Lexington, redcoats led by Major John Pitcairn face off against colonial militiamen on the village green. Tensions explode. A gunshot, still debated in whispers, rings out. 8 militiamen fall, but the real damage comes hours later in Concord, where rebel fighters ambush British troops at the Old North Bridge, sending them fleeing. Boston rejoices. The war has begun. Or so they think. Washington stands before Congress. The vote is cast. He's named Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. "Are you ready to lead a revolution?" a delegate whispers. "I'm not sure the revolution wants to be led," Washington replies grimly. That night, as he walks alone through the gardens behind Independence Hall, Mercer watches from the shadows and sends one more letter. In a dark, candle-lit chamber in New York City, a foreign diplomat reads Mercer's latest dispatch. It ends, "Washington will move north within the fortnight. He believes the men are loyal. He doesn't know. I report to you both." The diplomat smiles. It's Pierre Lafontaine, a French envoy with ties to both Versailles and London. "War," he whispers in French, "always breeds opportunity." Back at Lexington Green, blood still stains the soil. A boy retrieves a fallen musket. A British soldier's journal lies beside it, pages soaked red. The camera pans to a hidden figure watching from the tree line, a woman in a hood, Abigail Green. She turns and disappears into the woods. Far from the chaos, the Second Continental Congress gathers in the Pennsylvania State House. Tempers flare. Half the chamber demands a declaration of war. The other half wants peace, led by the cunning delegate Charles Wentworth of Virginia, who claims to speak for moderation while sending encrypted notes to an unknown foreign contact. Enter George Washington, freshly arrived from Mount Vernon, wearing his old French and Indian War uniform, tall, composed, and stoic, but not universally loved. Behind closed doors, John Adams lobbies for Washington as commander of the Continental Army. He's got stature, he's got Southern blood, and most importantly, he's not from Massachusetts, Adams says with a smirk. But some delegates whisper that Washington is arrogant, unstable, dangerous. Major Nathaniel Mercer, Washington's newly appointed aide, is young, brilliant, and utterly untrustworthy. He sends coded dispatches to Congressman John Dickinson, a secret member of the pacifist faction. But Mercer has another master as well, a mysterious foreign backer who signs letters only with a crimson omega. Mercer plays both sides beautifully, until Sybil Ludington arrives. She delivers her letter directly to Washington's camp outside Philadelphia. He reads it in silence, then burns it.
Smoke curls above the ruins of a small New York outpost recently taken by the British. Dead soldiers, both American and British, litter the road. Among the wreckage, Major Nathaniel Mercer kneels beside a tattered journal from a fallen Continental officer. He pockets it, not for Washington, not for Congress, but for someone else entirely. Back in Philadelphia, General George Washington sits alone in a candlelit war tent, poring over maps and grim letters from the front. His victories have been few, his supply lines thinner than ever. He stares into the dark and murmurs, "I'm not leading a revolution, I'm managing a breakdown." In the city's bustling salons, an invisible war is already raging. A whisper campaign has begun to circulate through Philadelphia society. Washington is unfit to lead. His Virginian pride, his lack of experience, his failures in Boston, all are being quietly weaponized. The whispers are traced back to Delegate Charles Wentworth, now maneuvering to place General Horatio Gates as a safer, more obedient alternative. Meanwhile, Adams attempts to hold the Congress together, but his own alliances are fraying. Abigail Green, now employed in the Congress's print room under a false name, overhears two delegates speak in hushed tones. "If Washington wins, we crown a king. If he loses, we hang." In Paris, Benjamin Franklin finally arrives, dripping with charm, flamboyant in a coonskin cap, and walking into French high society like a scandal in motion. He courts the court of Louis XVI with jokes and wine, but his mission is deadly serious: secure weapons, ships, and soldiers for a cause France is not yet sure it wants to back. But Franklin is not alone. A man from his past, Lucien Moreau, a former gambling partner turned royal courier, confronts him in a brothel. "If I'm to deliver your letters, Ben, you'll need to ensure they're not also addressed to London." Is Franklin freelancing diplomacy or playing both sides? In a candlelit alley outside Philadelphia, British officer Captain Cedric Vale meets his informant. The informant hands over a leather-bound book. Inside, meeting minutes, strategy letters, and voting records from the inner circle of the Continental Congress. The informant lifts his hood. It's Delegate Charles Wentworth. But Vale doesn't react with gratitude. "This is not London's war anymore," he says coldly. "This is mine now." He throws the book in the fire and hands Wentworth a much older scroll, sealed with a European crest. "From your true employer." Back in New York, British troops occupy the city, but behind enemy lines, a secret network begins to form. A group of common merchants, a tailor, a tavern keeper, and a courier band together under an alias, the Culper Ring. Their mysterious leader, known only by the code name Shadow One, coordinates encrypted messages between rebel spies throughout the city. Abigail Green receives one of these messages. Its code is incomplete. Its signature reads only CR. A surprising twist, Caleb Briggs, radical and loyal to the rebellion, is offered money and pardon if he delivers one of Washington's messengers to British forces. He refuses, then finds his younger brother Noah's secret letters to Eliza Halworth, daughter of a British major, hidden in the floorboards. Furious, he confronts Noah. "While we bleed in the mud, you write love poems to the enemy?" But Noah, crushed by the war and desperate for something pure, pushes back. "I'd rather die a traitor in love than a patriot in chains." Inside a dim room of Independence Hall, Washington stands before the full Congress. He delivers a rousing yet dark speech about unity, sacrifice, and unseen enemies. But behind him, in the back of the chamber, Nathaniel Mercer watches, his expression unreadable. Tucked into his coat is a letter from France addressed to Omega. "The snake is in the garden. Let him bloom." In Charleston, tensions boil as loyalist militias, led by Captain Elias Monroe, a disillusioned Southern landowner, begin organizing under a new banner, the Crowned Torch. They don't answer to London. They don't answer to Parliament. They answer to themselves. And they want vengeance on rebel merchants who've stolen their livelihoods. Monroe's group begins kidnapping rebel sympathizers, burning crops, and sabotaging Continental Army supply lines, all while publicly claiming loyalty to the king. Back in Boston, Samuel Adams receives word of these crowned-backed thugs and fears a second front in the South. He turns to an unexpected ally, a former loyalist-turned-informant named Lydia Wren. Wren gives him names, money trails, meeting places, but her final warning is chilling. They're not working for the king. They're working for someone else. The Culper Ring, now fully operational in British-occupied New York City, intercepts a letter between two Crown Torch operatives discussing Prince Edward's financial connections to rebel ports. They pass the letter to Abigail Green, now living under the alias Miss Elizabeth Hale in a British-guarded boarding house. She forwards it to General Washington, still camped outside Philadelphia. Washington reads it in silence, then burns it. Back in St. James's, King George begins hearing voices. He accuses his most loyal general of treason. He begins scratching maps into his own skin. His doctors prescribe leeches and isolation. Only Queen Charlotte can calm him, whispering lullabies in German to soothe his rage. But even she fears the crown now hangs on a madman's brow. In a final twist of irony, George commissions a new set of gold coins to be minted,
with his own face on one side and a broken chain on the other. "Let the colonies know," he says, "the leash is off." In a candlelit townhouse in Charleston, Captain Monroe opens a chest delivered from a Caribbean ship. Inside, barrels of Spanish gold. A letter rests on top. "To be used at your discretion. Keep the South aflame. E.Y. Edward York, the King's brother." In London's Royal Garden, Queen Charlotte finds George asleep on a bench, whispering in his dreams, "They're all snakes, even my sons." As she lays a blanket over him, a small, dark figure steps back into the shadows, Lord Eastwick, holding a letter addressed to France. Valley Forge, the winter is merciless. Starving soldiers huddle in rotting tents. Their boots fall apart. Disease spreads faster than news. General George Washington, now gaunt and hollow-eyed, walks through the encampment, acknowledging wounded men by name. He does not flinch, but his aides notice the tremble in his gloved hands when he thinks no one's looking. In a private log, he writes, "Victory will not come from bullets, but which side starves last." As supplies dwindle and pay remains months overdue, Captain Elijah Mott, a former farmer from upstate New York, begins stirring resentment in the ranks. He's charismatic, fiercely loyal to the idea of independence, but bitter toward what he calls Philadelphia's powdered wigs, who profit while soldiers freeze. Mott gathers a faction of soldiers planning to abandon Valley Forge and march on Congress to demand reform. But before they act, Mott is arrested on orders from Nathaniel Mercer, Washington's aide. Mercer interrogates him harshly, alone, with no witnesses. Mott emerges bloodied but silent. Later that night, he disappears from his makeshift cell. The guards swear they never saw anyone come or go. In Paris, Benjamin Franklin has become a sensation. He plays the charming, noble savage, dazzling salons with homespun wisdom, aphorisms, and coonskin caps. But beneath the soft smile, he's laying the groundwork for a deal with King Louis XVI, French military aid in exchange for promises of future trade dominance. At an opulent masquerade in Versailles, Franklin meets a mysterious guest, Madame Ruelle, a veiled courtier with connections to both the British crown and the Spanish court. She knows about the rebel victories and the defeats. She knows names no foreigner should. "You're either brilliantly informed," Franklin says, swirling his wine, "or someone's been reading my mail." She smiles. "I only read what you forget to burn." Back in New York, the Culper Ring intercepts a British letter, a coded message referencing an American spy, codenamed Gideon, reporting directly from Philadelphia. Abigail Green, now embedded in the office of the Continental Postmaster, traces the handwriting on the envelope. "This wasn't sent from British hands," she whispers. "This was printed on American linen stock. Someone inside our own system is feeding them." A mysterious letter circulates through Congress. It's unsigned, but it is damning. Washington intends to use the chaos of war to seize power. His goal is not a republic, it is a throne. The letter is signed only A.L. Washington is furious, but he doesn't show it publicly. Behind closed doors, he confronts Mercer. "Who's feeding them lies? I want names, Nathaniel. I want the snake pulled out by the root." But Mercer only bows and disappears into the shadows. Later that night, he meets secretly with a courier in an abandoned barn outside Valley Forge. He hands over a sealed scroll. "To Versailles. Tell them Franklin's getting restless." At Versailles, Franklin receives a message via a raven-feathered quill courier. The scroll is from Madame Ruelle. Inside, a single sentence.
There is a man near Washington whose loyalties bloom in two directions. Attached is a list of coded dispatches, all signed with Mercer's encryption pattern. Franklin is shaken. He turns to his assistant, Henry LaRoche, and says grimly, "Pack the letters. We return to London, but only through Spain." As winter breaks at Valley Forge, Washington stands alone outside his tent, watching steam rise from the snow. Word arrives that the French are strongly considering support, but still have not committed. From a distance, Abigail Green, disguised as a washerwoman, watches Mercer riding past the edge of camp. She follows, and hidden deep in the woods, a discarded soldier's uniform hangs on a tree, Captain Mott's, riddled with blood. Above it, carved into the bark, A.L. was right. General Benedict Arnold limps into a Philadelphia ballroom, his left leg still aching from the wounds of Saratoga, where he led the Continental Army to one of its rare and shining victories. Flags fly, women cheer, dignitaries toast. But behind every smile is a whisper. Hot-headed, arrogant, dangerous. Arnold notices that the toast to him is shorter than the toast to Washington. Later that night, as he walks alone by the Schuylkill River, he finds a letter under a stone near his estate. "You deserve better. There is a place for men like you on the winning side. M." Though once a national hero, Arnold is passed over for promotion. Congress investigates his use of military funds. His enemies multiply, especially Joseph Reed, head of the Pennsylvania Executive Council, who accuses Arnold of corruption. At home, Peggy Shippen Arnold, his young and beautiful wife from a loyalist Philadelphia family, urges him to fight back. "Why die for a country that doesn't love you?" she whispers. "Let's live for one that will." Her father, Judge Edward Shippen, begins introducing Arnold to neutral financiers, some of whom are not neutral at all. Under the flickering lights of a New York City masquerade, Major John Andre, a charismatic British intelligence officer, meets with a masked guest in a private parlor. "West Point," the guest says, swirling a goblet of French wine. "It controls the Hudson. Deliver it to you, and you deliver me a future." The guest removes his mask. It's Benedict Arnold. They shake hands. A deal is struck. Abigail Green, now deep within the Culper Ring's courier network, intercepts rumors of unusual traffic between West Point and British-held territories. Ciphered messages, midnight ferry crossings, unknown symbols. She raises her suspicions to the ring's mysterious leader, Shadow One, who warns her. The traitor is beloved. The wound will be deep. Meanwhile, Abigail crosses paths again with Noah Briggs, now operating a secret press on Long Island, printing propaganda for both sides. Their chemistry still burns, but both know trust is fragile. Arnold is given command of West Point, controlling the strategic gateway to New England. He sends word to Andre. The garrison will be lightly defended, a simple handover. All I need is the price. The British prepare a flotilla. Andre dresses in civilian clothes and sails upriver carrying the plans to capture West Point. But fate intervenes. Andre is captured by a trio of Continental militiamen. They search him. They find the plans. Arnold's name is scrawled across them. The message is rushed to General Washington, who had planned to visit Arnold that very morning. Arnold, warned at the last second by a coded note smuggled into West Point from Peggy Shippen via an unnamed courier, flees down the Hudson aboard a British sloop, the Woodger. Washington arrives hours later. He stands silently in Arnold's empty office. On the desk is a sealed envelope. Inside, a note. I served you with honor, but I no longer serve a nation. I serve a future that values men who do not kneel. Benedict Arnold. In New York, Shadow 1, the leader of the Culper Ring, receives orders from the Continental Congress. Expose the entire spy network if it means retrieving Andre and condemning Arnold. Shadow 1 faces a choice: protect the ring's secrecy or sacrifice it to stop further damage. They choose silence. Andre is hanged in Tappan, New York. Arnold is named traitor across every town square in the colonies. But the cost of silence: a dozen spies disappear. Some turn, some die, some vanish forever. Abigail Green walks along a riverbank at dusk. She tosses a ciphered message into the current. Her voice narrates over soft drums and distant cannon fire. There was a time we believed in lines, that one side was good and the other evil. But the truth hides in the shadows, where patriots become pariahs and heroes become ghosts. Behind her, in the distance, Peggy Shippen Arnold boards a carriage under British escort, vanishing into the fog.
A French fleet appears like a phantom on the horizon of Chesapeake Bay. Cannons salute, flags wave, soldiers, fresh, clean, and well-fed, march off ships to the stunned awe of weary continental troops. General Marquis de Lafayette, young and idealistic, rides into Washington's camp with a letter of commitment from King Louis XVI. France stands with liberty, so long as liberty serves France. Washington barely cracks a smile. Behind him, General Henry Knox whispers, "We've invited wolves to dine, and we're the roast." Among the French entourage is General Etienne de Vaux, a decorated commander known more for duels than discipline. Charismatic, poetic, and lethal, he quickly becomes a sensation at American headquarters. He takes a particular interest in Martha Washington, recently reunited with George after years apart. He calls her la lumière dans l'ombre, the light in the darkness. Washington notices and begins to unravel, quietly. Rumors swirl in camp. Did she entertain de Vaux in the gardens alone? Was her letter to George late or rewritten? Abigail Green, deep within the Culper Ring, returns to Valley Forge posing as a nurse. She delivers a warning to Nathaniel Mercer, who's regained Washington's trust. There's talk of a French admiral playing both sides. He's offering King George peace in exchange for control of southern ports. Mercer says nothing, but that night he writes 2 letters, one to Franklin, one to someone he signs as Omega. Abigail later finds one of his discarded drafts in the fire pit. Only the closing remains. If this succeeds, we won't need Congress. We'll need a crown. In Charleston, the British intensify their campaign, torching rebel farms and arresting suspected sympathizers. But the attacks are too precise. Loyalists in the South are receiving perfect intelligence, timing, location, identities. Why? Because Captain Elias Monroe, head of the rogue loyalist militia, the Crowned Torch, has cut a deal with Admiral Jacques Rochefort, the French fleet commander. Rochefort doesn't care who wins. He wants access to Charleston's ports. Permanently. Washington is pulled apart between a foreign army he cannot command, a crumbling Congress that cannot pay its soldiers, and whispers that he has become too powerful to be replaced, too unpredictable to be trusted. He suspects Martha of infidelity. He suspects Mercer of deception. He suspects himself of failure. Late one night, he rides to a bluff overlooking the encampment, stares into the dark, and loads his pistol. Only Lafayette finds him. "You're the fire, but even fire needs kindling.
Let us burn together. In a dimly lit wine cellar beneath Yorktown, Admiral Rochefort meets with a British courier. He hands over troop formations and continental weak points in exchange for a signed offer. If Britain agrees to a French protectorate in the southern colonies, we will withdraw. France was never here for liberty. They were here for land. The courier smiles and hands him a letter from King George's court. But neither realizes that Abigail Green is listening from the shadows. Back in Versailles, Benjamin Franklin stands before the French court. He's received a report from Abigail. Admiral Rochefort, Franklin announces to the stunned nobility, is not an agent of France. He is an agent of himself. Gasps echo through the hall, but Louis XVI only raises a hand. This is war. If you do not gamble, you do not win. Martha Washington stands alone in her tent. In her hands is a sealed letter from Devoe. She tosses it into the fire. Behind her, Washington enters, his face unreadable. Did there ever be a choice, Martha? Or did we all already lose the moment we started lying? A snow-covered camp outside Morristown. A soldier strikes his frozen boots against a rock, his breath ragged. Another man collapses beside a dead campfire. Their commander approaches, not with food, but with a list. Pick 5 men to be discharged. That's all Congress can afford. Desperation has a new name: mutiny. Inside Washington's icy war tent, senior officers deliver grim news. The Pennsylvania line, over 1,200 men, have mutinied, marching south toward Philadelphia to demand overdue pay and food. They carry weapons. They chant, "No taxation, no starvation." Washington is livid but frightened. He rides to intercept them, only to find that someone else has: Congress, led by Joseph Reed, who negotiates directly with the mutineers, bypassing military command. The precedent is dangerous. Reed grants amnesty and payment. Other regiments notice, and they're jealous. Washington tells Nathaniel Mercer, "They have fed the wolf. Now it knows where the flock sleeps." In the flickering candlelight of a private Philadelphia tavern, a group of Continental officers, most notably General Horatio Gates, still stinging from Saratoga envy, gather under the guise of reform. Their goal: replace Washington, or better yet, persuade him to seize control and stabilize the nation. They call it the Newburgh Proposal. The plan? Offer Washington absolute power under the title Protector of the Republic. A republic in name, a monarchy in practice. What they don't know is that Abigail Green, now embedded as a barmaid in the tavern, is listening. And worse, Mercer is there too. In New York, the Culper Ring is on the verge of exposure. A courier is captured, another disappears, their safe house is raided, messages go undelivered. Abigail sends a final letter marked urgent. The ring is burning. If I vanish, follow the initials A.L. Hours later, she's gone. No body, no trace. Back in the Hudson Highlands, Shadow 1, the ring's faceless leader, receives the news. Instead of mourning, they whisper, "She knew this would happen. We all did." In Savannah, Captain Elias Monroe and his rogue loyalist faction, the Crowned Torch, seize the city's supply depots and execute rebel officers. But Monroe does not raise the British flag. Instead, he raises a new one, a black crown over 13 broken stars. Monroe declares himself the Viceroy of the South, vowing to establish a Southern crowned confederacy loyal to neither king nor Congress. The revolution is now fighting on 3 fronts. Word of the Newburgh Proposal reaches Washington. He summons the conspirators, Gates included, to his camp. He enters silently. No formal address, just a letter. It's from Martha. It reads, "If you must become king to save them, be the kind they could never fear." He lowers the letter. Then, to the stunned officers, he says, "If you seek a king, you've come to the wrong man. But if you seek one to slay kings, I remain at your service." He burns the proposal.
Later that night, Mercer meets a cloaked figure on a snowy trail. He hands over a set of forged letters implicating Congress in the failure to pay soldiers and the starvation of the South. "Ready for your crown?" the figure asks. Mercer replies, "It's not for me. It's for the one who still thinks he doesn't want it." The figure removes their hood. It's Charles Wentworth, the same congressional delegate who sabotaged Washington. He never left. He just changed masks. A lone lantern flickers outside an abandoned farmhouse near New York. A coded message is pinned to the door with a dagger. The signature, A.L. As the wind blows it out, distant drums roll. The war is not over, but the idealism that began it might be. The camera pans over scorched fields outside Yorktown. Continental and French forces close in. The end of the war is near, but victory tastes like ash. Inside Washington's tent, a new letter arrives. He reads it silently. His hand trembles. Then he drops it into the fire. The signature, A.L. He doesn't speak. He doesn't sleep. But the next morning, he orders preparations for a siege. In a shadowy corner of New York, Abigail Green steps out of the darkness, alive, but changed. She was never captured. She went dark to flush out the last traitors in the Culper Ring. And she found them. The rot wasn't just inside the ring, it started in the roots. She reunites with Noah Briggs, now deeply embedded as a double agent in a British printing press. Their love simmers once more, but Abigail warns, this ends with one of us buried. In Philadelphia, Washington returns to Congress, unexpected, unannounced. He confronts Charles Wentworth in front of the entire chamber. Wentworth tries to play innocent, then confident, then smug. But Washington throws a letter on the floor, one bearing Wentworth's seal, offering the British military intelligence in exchange for post-war position. Gasps fill the room. Wentworth glares at Washington and says, "You want a republic? Be prepared to rule it with chains." He is arrested, but as he's dragged out, he yells, "You've already become the king you feared." In Paris, Benjamin Franklin receives a coded dispatch from Abigail Green. It confirms what he already suspected. His longtime Parisian confidant, Madame Ruelle, has been feeding British intelligence for years. Franklin confronts her at a masquerade ball. She doesn't deny it. "Liberty is beautiful, but she is not profitable," she says. As he turns to leave, she drops her mask and says, "Don't pretend you've profited too." Franklin looks down at the wine in his hand, and for the first time in the series, his smile breaks. Back at Yorktown, the siege tightens. General Cornwallis is cornered, but inside the American camp, tensions explode. Nathaniel Mercer returns from a secret mission with news. The French plan to withdraw after Yorktown unless they're guaranteed territorial control. Washington, exhausted and suspicious, finally demands the truth. "Who do you serve, Mercer?" Mercer answers simply, "I serve the idea of America, not the men pretending to represent it." But then, Washington produces a letter, written in Mercer's cipher, promising aid to Shadow One in return for influence over post-war leadership. Mercer doesn't deny it. "I did what you couldn't. I planned for what comes after." Washington places him under house arrest, but does not have him executed. "You may be right, Mercer,
but I can't let this country be born from betrayal. The Culper Ring intercepts a final message during the siege, a letter marked A.L. addressed to the British High Command. Abigail decrypts it. Her face goes pale. The real A.L. is Lydia Wren, the once loyalist informant turned rebel spy. She wasn't just reporting from both sides, she engineered the mutinies, leaked the letters that fractured Congress, and even fed false rumors to both Washington and Mercer. When she's finally cornered by Abigail in the ruins of an old printer's shop, she smiles and says, "The revolution needed a villain, so I became one. That's how you keep the story simple." Abigail lowers her pistol. "You're not a villain. You're a mirror," then fires. As the final British surrender looms, Peggy Shippen Arnold, now living in quiet exile in British-held Halifax, reads of Yorktown's impending fall. She places her wedding ring into a wooden box and buries it in the snow. Beside it, a torn page from Benjamin Arnold's personal journal. "We did not lose because they were stronger. We lost because they were better liars." In the quiet before the final battle, Washington walks through his camp. He sees the faces of those he's lost, figuratively and literally. Abigail, Franklin, Mercer, the Ring, the Republic. He finds Martha sitting by the fire. She asks, "If we win tomorrow, what do we become?" He answers, "Whatever's left when the smoke clears." As dawn breaks over Yorktown, drums begin to roll. Yorktown, a gray sky. British soldiers lay down arms in silence. General Cornwallis, ill, does not appear, sending a subordinate instead. Washington accepts the surrender with no smile, no fist in the air, just tired eyes and a single order. Let history write its own celebration. We have work to do. But behind him, officers exchange wary glances, because they all know peace won't mean unity. Peace means division. In Paris, diplomats finalize the Treaty of Paris, but Franklin, now visibly aged, notices a clause he didn't write. A quiet territorial concession in the Mississippi Valley to French mercantile interests. He confronts the French envoy. "You slipped it in after I signed," he says coldly. "We merely learned from the best," the Frenchman replies. Franklin signs anyway. Later, in a private garden, he burns a personal letter addressed to Abigail Green. "You were right. Even liberty is for sale." In Philadelphia, the fledgling Congress celebrates victory, but tensions explode over who will control the new government. John Adams demands a strong federal center. Thomas Jefferson warns of tyranny. Hamilton starts drafting papers behind closed doors. Washington remains silent, until he's summoned, unexpectedly, by a secret group of officers. They've unearthed the revised draft of the Declaration of Independence, one Franklin allegedly edited alone. The language is subtle, but changes everything. "All men are created equal" was once followed by, "unless bound by natural law or ancient obligation." Who inserted it? Who removed it? Franklin says nothing, but Washington doesn't believe him, but needs the myth more than the truth. Nathaniel Mercer, once Washington's most trusted aide, is brought to trial, accused of sedition for his role in the Newburgh proposal. But the trial is a farce. Evidence is sealed, witnesses vanish. Mercer knows too much. Before his execution, he delivers a final speech. "You want me to be the traitor, so you can be the hero? But you'll always be afraid of one thing, that I was willing to do what you couldn't. He is hanged in Boston under armed guard. Washington does not attend. But Abigail Green, in a widow's veil, watches from the crowd, expression unreadable. In London, Benedict Arnold, now an aging, bitter figure, hears of the war's end and America's independence. He raises a glass in a darkened pub and says, "So they've won. May they enjoy the blood-soaked throne they once condemned." When asked what he would have done differently, he replies, "Killed Washington when I had the chance." A stranger at the bar turns to him. It's Peggy. She says, "He's already dead. He just doesn't know it." Back in Philadelphia, as the new government drafts the Constitution, Abigail Green meets with Washington one last time. She hands him a folded parchment sealed in wax. "You need to see this before they bury it." It's the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, complete with signatures, but with a seventh forged line added beneath Franklin's. And in the event of disorder or disunion, the undersigned empower the military to restore structure through executive oversight. In other words, a legal loophole for military rule. An embedded crown. Washington stares at it in silence. Then he throws it into the fire. "We'll write a new story," he says, "even if it's a lie." The Culper Ring dissolves. Shadow 1 leaves their final journal entry. America was never won, only disguised. Franklin dies quietly in 1790, his obituary praising him as a founding father. The forged clause is never mentioned. Lydia Wren's name becomes folklore, a ghost whispered about in taverns. No grave, no records. Noah Briggs opens a printing press in Baltimore, publishing books under the title Ashes of Liberty. Washington declines kingship, but assumes the presidency. His first order of business? Bury the secrets. Protect the myth. In a dimly lit Philadelphia workshop, a boy sets a printing plate for the first official U.S. dollar. The camera pans over the new symbol of the nation, shiny, pure, idealized. But beneath the plate, tucked inside the drawer, is a crumpled piece of parchment. The real draft, blood-stained, burned at the edge, and marked in the corner, in fading ink, A.L.